and not just in the traditional Five Eyes sense, do we have powerful partners and allies, but you're seeing that grow a lot. Especially as it relates to the Chinese Communist Party. You're seeing different economic and political relationships evolve with Vietnam. You're seeing Japan and Korea brought into the conversation more often, even militarily, which for a while there wasn't the case. And so I think France and Germany, as it relates to space, I think, and then let's not forget, we now have a larger NATO than we once had, and that is the exact opposite of what Vladimir Putin wanted to happen. He did not want NATO to grow. He actually wanted to potentially, certainly he wants it to go away, but I don't think he thought that was going to happen. But I think he would want it to have weakened. And I think now that's no longer the case. And you have nations that are saying, yeah, we actually need to heavily invest in our military. The one thing that concerns me is I would say this about our own nation too, is I see us continue to invest in things that would allow us to win the wars of the past. And all of these billion-dollar aircraft carriers and fifth-generation aircraft. And I think we need to balance that investment a little bit more in the technologies of space and cyber into truly understanding and going on the offense in the information environment, legally and ethically. I'm not saying we need to put out mis and disinformation. There's plenty of that out there anyways, but how to operate. And then to invest into the most important thing, which is our people, so that we have informed and educated citizens and soldiers and service members across the Joint Force, Marines. And that's where I think we need to invest a little bit more and divest a little bit more in some of the other traditional things like tanks and aircraft carriers and fifth generation aircraft. Because if you read Unrestricted Warfare, and I'm about to do a series on that book, our enemies are, and I understand that book was written by a couple of colonels in China, and that doesn't mean it's Chinese policy or doctrine. But I also know that no adversary is going to say, what is the strength of America? Let's fight them there. And our strength is obviously our United States Navy, our United States Army, our United States Air Force, and God bless, obviously, the United States Marine Corps and Space Force. And so why would any adversary look to fight us there? They're going to look to fight us in other areas, in cyber, what we call gray zone conflict, just before the level of armed conflict, and slowly chip away, which is they've been doing, and establish new norms in space and that sort of area, and consistently flood us with misinformation, with disinformation through social media and through other areas as well. I just found out China owns a radio station in Washington, D.C. I didn't know that. I was doing some research on this, and so they can spout off. I don't know how many people listen to it, but it's a venue, it's an application. And so I think we as a military need to have the foresight and see the future of conflict, still have a powerful Navy. Our submarines are one of our great advantages, and aircraft carriers and aircraft and all of those things are important. But I would say in a budget constrained environment, which at some point there's a budget, we need to invest a little more in the technologies of the future and maybe a little less in those capabilities that would have allowed us to win in a World War II type scenario.
Yeah, I think you're right on. One of the things that I noticed a year or two ago was, a defense budget of about $800 billion and about $10 billion of that going into cyber. And I'm thinking to myself, no, this is our great vulnerability. And we've talked about it. You and I have talked about it on this show. You said there are so many ways in which a huge hack can compromise our healthcare and our energy and our transportation and our banking. I mean, that just shuts the country down. And to think that it's, a tiny, tiny percentage of the overall defense budget, it seems like there's a great vulnerability there.
I think in many ways today, people can't truly visualize the power and the capabilities of space and cyberspace. And I promise you, if we don't get our act together in those two domains and come to grips with how we're going to operate in the information environment, what's going to happen is akin to a cyber 9/11, and I'm not predicting anything, but that's what's going to happen to wake us up. Instead, we can take action now and be intelligent about it. But just like then, when Billy Mitchell brought it up, you had people that had their pet projects. So the Secretary of the Army and the Navy did not want to invest in something else because that means their pet projects would be less funded. And if we can't stop thinking that way and think of our country first and our citizens first and the flag first and invest in the priorities of the nation first, and if that meant, quite frankly, investing more in the Air Force and less in the Army or the Marine Corps, but it made sense, then so be it. And not say, well, what about mine? And I get a third, you get a third, you get a third. It needs to be priority based, and intelligence needs to drive what that threat looks like and playing that out. And then maybe we have a national debate and Congress decides what to fund and what not to fund. And I know some of that happens, but for the most part, if you look at the services, they all get their fair share instead of a priority-based what truly needs to get funded first. And I can't tell you today what the budget is for cyber, but I imagine if we were able to cut some other things that aren't going to be necessary, we could find the money. Find the money to fund that to the capability we need, so that we're not just on the defense, but we're on the offense as well.